So, good afternoon, everyone. Wishing you all a very happy new year. My name is C.A. and I welcome you on behalf of our entire team of CJ Legal to this CJ Legal Live Meet. CJ Legal is a platform where we bring to our subscribers the detailed analysis of various qualitative aspects of GST through our newsletters and webinars. As we all know that the long-awaited 48th GST Council meeting held virtually in New Delhi on 17th of December 2022. 48th GST Council meeting has brought about various significant recommendations and clarifications in GST laws. To comply with such recommendations, CBIC has also issued various notifications and circulars. In order to analyze the above in detail and suggest immediate actionable for the industry, CJ Legal is organizing its webinar series CJ Legal GST Meet, analysis of the recommendations and changes with respect to the 48th GST Council meeting. The deliberation will be taken by C. Chitresh Gupta sir. C. Chitresh Gupta is a senior member of CJ Legal having vast knowledge and experience into indirect taxation. The deliberation will be followed by the question answer session. If anyone wishes to ask question in between of the deliberation, they may please type the question in the chat box or raise their hands. Now may I ask C. Chitresh Gupta sir to start his deliberation.
Good afternoon, all of you. And first of all, I wish you a very, very happy new year and happy Lodi to all of you. So we thought it is important to come out with this webinar because as all of you know, the GST Council had its meeting on 17 December, and pursuant to that GST Council meeting, lot of changes and lot of notification circular has been issued by the CBIC. So there are a lot of changes which are being made. So we'll be discussing and analyzing all those changes in detail. And if you have any question, you can raise the query at the end of the session. So I'm just sharing my presentation. I hope my slide is visible to everybody.
Yes, sir, the slide is visible now.
Yeah. And my voice is also clear?
Yes, sir, the voice is also clear.
You are requested to put yourself on the mute because it causes disturbance to other people. So as I have already discussed the post 48 GST Council meeting, there are a lot of notification which has been issued by CBIC. So there are 2 non-tariff and 4 tariff notification which has been issued by the CBIC pursuant to 48 GST meeting. Now, apart from these notifications, there are 6 circulars which has been issued by CBIC. So these circulars deal with clarification related to difference in input tax credit availed in Form GSTR 3B as compared to that detailed in GSTR 2A. Then the another clarification relates to availment of input tax credit where the place of supply is determined in terms of proviso to subsection 8 of section 12, etc., etc. So we will be discussing these provisions and these clarification in detail in subsequent slides. So for sake of simplicity, I have divided my presentation into different parts. Like I'll be discussing first the changes with respect to registration under GST. Then I'll be discussing the changes with respect to ITC. Then changes with respect to filing of returns. Then refunds, appeals, demand and recovery, assumptions. Then changes in assumption notification and rate of goods. Then other clarification and changes. And then at the last, I'll be discussing the other recommendation which has been made by GST Council in its meeting, but which are yet to be notified or yet to be yet to see the light of the day. That I'll be discussing in the last. Now, first see the changes with respect to registration under GST. First is verification of mobile number and email address linked with PAN for GST registration. Amendment in Rule 8 of the CGST rules. तो सर अगर if we see the existing provision, अगर हम GST में registration के लिए apply करते हैं In that case, the SASE is required to give the PAN, the email ID, and mobile number. But there are a lot of instances of using the PAN of a different person and getting the fake GST registration. In order to curb those practices, now the CBIC has amended Rule 8, Subrule 1 and Subrule 2 to provide that the applicant is now not required to provide the mobile number, email address at the time of applying for the registration. The applicant is only required to provide the permanent account number allotted to him by the income tax department, and the email address and the mobile number which he has given at the time of allotment of PAN permanent account number will be picked up from the income tax database, and the OTP will be sent on the mobile number, mobile number and the email address. So in a way it will get authenticated that the same person is using his PAN for getting the registration. So the rationale of this amendment is to discourage the fake GST registration under GST. And this amendment is already effective with effect from 26 December 2022. The another change is with respect to biometric based Aadhaar authentication for registration. If I give you the background for this amendment, earlier section 25 subsection 6A has been notified through Finance Act 2019 with effect from 1st January 2022, which requires the Aadhaar authentication or furnishing of proof of possession Aadhaar number of every person applying for registration, meaning thereby every person who is applying for GST registration is required to undergo a Aadhaar authentication. Further, in this regard, Rule 8 Subrule 4A has been introduced, which required all applicants of registration to undergo Aadhaar authentication with effect from 21st August 2020. Post-phase notification number 94/2020 has been introduced, biometric-based Aadhaar authentication. However, the same was not notified till date. Although the provision was there for the biometric-based Aadhaar authentication in the law, but that provision has not been notified till date. Now, the CBIC has issued a notification number 26 and notification number 27, and has further amended Rule 8 Subrule 4A and prescribed the procedure for biometric-based Aadhaar authentication. And as per the revised procedure, every application for registration made by a person who has opted for authentication Aadhaar number while applying for registration and is identified on the common portal based on data analysis and risk parameter shall be followed by biometric based Aadhaar authentication and taking photograph of the applicant along with verification of original copy of the document uploaded, meaning thereby जब एप्लीकेंट कोई भी एप्लीकेंट जो है जीएसटी पोर्टल पे अप्लाई करता है फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ ऑब्टेनिंग जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन, तो दैट एप्लीकेशन विल बी वेरीफाइड बाय द जीएसटी पोर्टल based on the data analysis and risk parameter which are being already set in the GST portal, and if that application comes under the risky category, in that case that in case of that application the biometric Aadhaar based authentication is required to be done, and that person will be required to go to the facilitation center as notified by the commissioner, and where the biometric based Aadhaar authentication will be undertaken, and his photograph will also be undertaken, and the original copies of the document which he has furnished along with the registration application will also be seen. As of now, the central government has notified that the provision of biometric based Aadhaar authentication shall be applicable in the state of Gujarat only. So sir, as of now, the biometric based Aadhaar authentication has been made applicable in Gujarat on a trial basis, and if it is successful in the state of Gujarat, then it will be implemented in other states also. Then physical verification in case of biometric based Aadhaar authentication. So physical verification of place of business before granting registration, even in case of applicant opting to undergo biometric based Aadhaar authentication, if such applicants are identified by GST portal as risk based on data analysis and risk parameters, meaning thereby अगर किसी पर्सन ने रजिस्ट्रेशन की एप्लीकेशन फाइल करी ऑन जीएसटी पोर्टल and that person has been identified as risky based on the data analysis and risk parameters in the GST portal, then two things will happen. First, that person will be required to go biometric based Aadhaar authentication. Second, the physical verification of place of business will also be done in case of such person. And it is also specified that the time limit for granting registration in such cases or seeking clarification in such cases will be 30 days from the date of submission of application. However, if you see in the normal cases, the time limit for granting the registration is 7 days. Now, another change is sumo to application for cancellation of registration of for TDS deductor and TCS collectors. Amendment to Rule 12, Sub-Rule 3. Earlier, a person no longer liable to deduct tax at source under Section 51 or collect tax at source under Section 52 may apply for cancellation of registration with effect on 26/12/2022. Meaning thereby जो पहले provision था उसमें there was no provision for a person to apply sumoto for cancellation of registration in case he is no longer liable to deduct TDS under Section 51 or TCA under Section 52. So he just have to carry the registration, and because he cannot file application for cancellation of registration. So this was causing the hardship. Now the law has been amended and the power has been given to the person himself to apply for cancellation of registration if he is no longer liable to deduct or collect tax at source under GST. So this is a very welcome change, and this will remove the difficulties which are being faced by many assessees. Now let us come to the changes with respect to input tax credit under GST. So sir, there are a lot of changes which has been made in the input tax credit in GST, and there are a lot of issues which are coming and everybody is facing in input tax credit. Now let us see, many draconian changes has been made pursuant to this GST Council meeting in ITC provisions. First amendment is more of clarificatory. So I'll just tell you the logic of that amendment and what was earlier and what was now. So first is rationalization of Rule 37 to provide for proportionate ITC reversal on part payment by recipient. Rule 37 sir, relates to a payment to a supplier. Basically, if the recipient does not make the payment to the supplier within 180 days from the date of issuance of invoice, then he is required to reverse the input tax credit. So Rule 37 deals with such scenario. So Rule 37 was amended with effect of 1st October 2022. And as per the amended Rule 37, where the registered person failed to pay to the supplier the value of supply along with tax within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice, he would be required to pay the ITC availed along with interest under Section 50. तो सर ये जो Section 30 Rule 37 था वो अमेंड हुआ with 1st October 2022, and in this rule it has been said if the registered person failed to pay to the supplier value of supply along with tax within 180 days, then he is required to pay the ITC weight along with interest. So sir, in this rule nowhere it has been mentioned whether the proportionate ITC needs to be reversed or the full ITC needs to be reversed. It just said he is required to pay the ITC. So there was confusion कि what needs to be done, कि proportionate करना है या full करना है. And if we see the position prior to this amendment, the requirement to pay the ITC availed was only proportionate to the amount remaining unpaid to the supplier. Meaning thereby अगर आपको 100 रुपीज सप्लायर को देने थे और आपने 60 रुपीज सप्लायर को दे दिए विद इन 180 डेज, तो जो 40 रुपीज अनपेड है उस पे ही प्रोपोर्शनेट आईटीसी आपको रिवर्स करना था. बट दैट थिंग इज वाज नॉट मेंशन्ड अंडर रूल 30 amended rule 37 sub rule 1. Now in order to remove this anomaly, the rule 37 sub rule 1 of CGST rules has been amended retrospectively with effect from 1st October 2022 to provide for reversal of input tax credit only proportionate to the amount not paid to the supplier vis-a-vis the value of supply including tax payable. So I think this is a welcome amendment, and this amendment has been made only to remove the ambiguity which was there in the law. And as such, in my view, in case of most of our client, we have been reversing the proportionate credit only. So in my view, it is just a clarification and does not have any as such impact on the thing which we are doing already. Now, the another very important change which is related to input tax credit is the reversal of ITC in case of non-payment of tax by the supplier and reavailment thereof. So, sir, if we go through section 16, subsection 2, section 16, subsection 2 of the CGST Act deals with the conditions which needs to be satisfied for claim of input tax credit. So there are many conditions which have been given in section 16, subsection 2, and one of those conditions which is contained in subclause C is that the recipient is eligible to avail the input tax credit provided the tax in respect of such supply has been paid by the supplier. Now the issue which was there always, and the question which was always asked by the recipient, that how he'll ensure that the tax on that supply has been paid by the supplier, because supplier is filing the GST, his GST 1, and supplier is filing his GST 3B, and he has no control over the compliance by the supplier. So it is very difficult for the recipient to ensure that whether the supplier has paid the tax to the government or not, and thereby ensuring the compliance of section 16 subsection 2 and clause C. Similarly, there was section 41 subsection 2 which says that the credit of input tax availed by registered person in respect of such supplies of goods or services or both, the tax payable whereon has not been paid by the supplier shall be reversed along with applicable interest. Meaning thereby अगर जो है supplier ने tax pay नहीं करा, तो in that case the ITC availed by recipient will have to be reversed with applicable interest in such manner as may be prescribed. When I use the word, when the law use the word prescribed, means prescribed in the rules. तो recipient को credit reverse करना पड़ेगा with interest in the manner prescribed in the rules. But as of up to now, no manner was prescribed how such credit was required to be reversed. Further, the proviso to this subsection says that where the said supplier makes the payment of tax payable in respect of said supplies, the said registered person may re-avail the amount of credit reversed by him in such manner as may be prescribed. Meaning thereby जब supplier ने tax की payment नहीं करी, तो recipient को ITC reverse करना पड़ेगा along with interest, और जब अगर supplier जो है tax की payment government को कर देता है बाद में, in that case later on the recipient becomes eligible for reclaim of input tax credit. So since no procedure has been prescribed for these things, how these things will be carried out, Rule 37A has been inserted now, White Notification number 26/2022, dated 26 December, to provide the manner for such reversal and revealment of ITC. So as per new Rule 37A, it says ITC claimed by recipient based on details furnished in GSTR 1 or invoice furnishing facility by supplier, but tax has not been has not furnished GSTR 3B till September of following financial year. Meaning thereby जो रिसिपिएंट ने अपना इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट क्लेम करा था, वो उसने क्लेम करा था जो कि उसका जो बेसिकली जो इनवर्ट सप्लाई थी दैट वाज रिफ्लेक्टिंग इन जीएसटीआर 2A और जीएसटीआर 2B, बट उस सप्लायर ने अपना जीएसटीआर 3B फॉर दैट पीरियड फाइल नहीं करा टिल 30th सितंबर ऑफ फॉलोइंग फाइनेंशियल ईयर। मीनिंग देयर बाय अगर ये क्रेडिट फाइनेंशियल ईयर 21-22 का था तो 30 सितंबर 2022 तक उसको जो है जीएसटीआर 3B फॉर दैट पीरियड फाइल करनी चाहिए थी, बट उस सप्लायर ने फाइल नहीं की। तो in that case, what will happen? The first is the recipient to reverse the ITC on or before 30th number of the following financial year. Meaning there पे एक हम live example ले लेते हैं, जैसे in our case we are into financial year 22-23. तो अब suppose financial year 22-23 की सप्लाई है, तो रिसिपिएंट को ने जीएसटीआर 1 फाइल कर दी 22-23 की, बट उसकी जीएसटीआर 3B फाइल नहीं करी फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर पीरियड। तो ये रूल कहता है अगर सप्लायर ने उसकी जीएसटीआर 3B फाइल कर दी अप टू 30th September 2023, then there is no issue. The credit can be claimed by the recipient and no reversal is required. But suppose take the case if return GST 3B is not furnished by supplier up to 30th September 2023. In that case, this rule says recipient to reverse the ITC on or before the 30th November of the following financial year. Meaning thereby 30 सितंबर के बाद जब वो अक्टूबर की रिटर्न रिसिपिएंट अपनी फाइल करेगा, which will be filed on 20th November. So in that return, the recipient will be required to reverse the input tax credit which he has availed. In case reversal not done till 30 November, then excess ITC to be paid along with interest. Now in the second leg you can see कि the rule says कि अगर आपने 30 नवंबर तक रिवर्सल नहीं करा तो 30 नवंबर के बाद जो है जो आईटीसी रिवर्स होगा वो विद इंटरेस्ट होगा। तो सर यहाँ देखें जो पहला लेग था कि अगर आप 30 नवंबर तक आईटीसी रिवर्स कर देते हैं तो उसमें आपको इंटरेस्ट नहीं देना था, लेकिन अगर आप सेकंड केस में फॉल कर गए कि आपने 30 नवंबर के बाद उसको रिवर्स करा तो इन दैट केस यू विल आल्सो बी रिक्वायर्ड टू पे द इंटरेस्ट ऑन द रिवर्सल, ऑल्दो द रूल इज साइलेंट कि what will be the period of interest and for how many days and for how much period it will be calculated. But in my view, since the person becomes ineligible for the input tax credit with effect from 1st December 2023, so in that case interest should be paid from 1st December 2023 only. But there can be different possible views also in this regard. So in this, I suggest this suitable clarification should be issued by the CBIC in order to avoid the potential litigation at the later date. Then the third is reclaim of ITC allowed subject to payment of tax by the supplier. तो जब supplier ने tax pay कर दिया तब recipient उस ITC को reclaim कर सकता है. And in case of reclaim of ITC, the limitation time limitation for claim of ITC which is given in section 16 subsection 4 shall not be applicable, and reclaim can be made in irrespective of any time limit which has been given in section 16 subsection 4. Now the rule has casted an additional responsibility on the recipient to ensure the filing status of the GSTR 3B of the supplier, जो कि अगर GSTR 3B supplier ने फाइल नहीं करी तो definitely the recipient will not be eligible to claim the input tax credit. तो GST portal provides an option to view filing status for a GSTIN which provide tax period wise filing status of GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. Recipient can use this facility to track whether the supplier has filed a GSTR 3B or not. So friend, this is the tracking which you can do by going onto the GST portal, whether the supplier has filed his return or not. So one very important thing which is coming to my mind is that the rule only talks about the filing of GSTR 3B of a particular tax period, meaning thereby मेरे को GSTR 1 फाइल करनी थी और उस particular tax period की मैंने GSTR 3B नहीं फाइल करी, तो this rule will apply. But this rule nowhere says the GSTR 3B has to be filed correctly, and the corresponding supply which has been declared in GSTR 1 should be declared in 3B also. So that is not the case which is being covered by this rule. This rule just says कि आपने GSTR supply ने GSTR 1 फाइल करी और 3B फाइल नहीं करी, irrespective of the fact whether the details which were there in GSTR 1 has been declared in 3B or not. तो इन माई व्यू अगर GSTR 1 सप्लायर ने फाइल करी और GSTR 3B फाइल कर दी with the partial details which were available in GSTR 1, in that case the new rule 37A will not get attracted. Then in my view this rule also have a limited applicability, because we have seen in GST law a lot of changes has already been made in the return filing process, and now most of the returns like filing of GSTR 1 and 3B has to be done sequentially. And we also see if GSTR 3B of the previous period has not been filed, in that case GSTR 1 of the subsequent period can also not be filed. So in my view this rule is going to have a very limited implication, and it needs to be seen in the times to come. Now let us come to another clarification with respect to input tax credit, which is the clarification to remove ambiguity and legal dispute pertaining to claim of ITC as per GSTR 2A for financial year 2017-18 and 18-19. तो सर CBIC ने एक सर्कुलर इशू करा और उसमें उन्होंने क्लैरिफाई करा कि अगर आपके GSTR 2A ITC क्लेम्ड इन GSTR 2A एंड GSTR 3B में अगर डिफरेंसेस हैं तो उसको कैसे डील करना है. But friends, note that this circular is applicable for the initial 2 years, 17-18 and 18-19, and for the subsequent period, this circular has no implication. So, sir, if I give you the background, the lot of notices has been issued to the registered person in respect of non-compliance of Section 16 to subsection C of the GST Act in cases where the inward supplies are not reflected in GSTR 2A. However, neither the Commissionerate nor the SSC are finding the correct process of validation of the above non-compliance. So, sir, there can be two kind of situation which I foresee. First is that the authorities issues you the notice, the notice or to notice to the registered person, where the authorities contend that कि भाई आपका ये ITC आपने GSTR 3B में क्लेम करा है, but this ITC is not coming in GSTR 2A. This is first kind of notice which is being coming. This second kind of notice which is being coming is that कि जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि भाई आपने कुछ ITC GSTR 3B में ज्यादा क्लेम करा है और वो ITC GSTR 2A में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है. जो कि वो GSTR 2A में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है, तो हम ये मानते हैं कि इन इनवॉइसेस पे सप्लायर ने टैक्स पे नहीं करा है. जब सप्लायर ने टैक्स पे नहीं करा है तो सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2 क्लॉज सी की जो कंडीशन है, the tax should have been paid by the supplier, has not been satisfied, and in that case you are required to reverse the input tax credit. तो सर दो तरह के ये नोटिस आ रहे हैं और ये दोनों ही बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट है. रीजन बीइंग, इफ यू गो टू द सेक्शन 155 of the CGST Act, the section 155 of the CGST Act says that in case of claim of input tax credit by a registered person, the burden of proof will be on the registered person who is making the claim, meaning thereby now it is a responsibility of the registered person to ensure that all the conditions which are being given in section 16 subsection 2 clause C of the CGST Act has been complied in order to avail the valid input tax credit. So friends, in the first case which I said ki in the notice they have just said ki you have claimed the ITC in GSTR 3B and those invoices are not reflected in 2A, and they have not alleged that since they are not reflected in GSTR 2A, so you have breached the condition of section 16 subsection 2 clause C, which pertains to payment of tax by supplier. In that case, you are not required to do anything. You just say that GSTR 2A is not a valid document during this period. So we have lot of argument in this case, like initially GSTR 2A was not a valid document. Reason being the complete matching concept which was there uh, initially when the GST was introduced was not implemented. Like the supplier was required to file GSTR1, and on the basis of GSTR1, the details of inward supply was to be auto-populated in GSTR2, and those inward supply needs to be accepted, rejected, or modified by the recipient. And only after that, and after that matching, those input tax credit will flow to GSTR 3 of the recipient, and finally return in GSTR 3 has to be filed by the recipient. This complete matching concept has been drastically failed and has not been implemented. Now, the question is, when this matching concept has not been implemented in totality, so whether the government has the power to implement the GSTR 2A during this period is without any base. So there is no background of GSTR 2A during this period 17, 18 and 18, 19. So GSTR 2A was not there in the law at all. Second is, if I talk about the situation starting from 9th October 2019, the CBIC has introduced Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4, which says that the credit in case of invoices which are not appearing in GSTR 2A can be availed up to a specified percentage. So specified percentage was a key, they keep on reducing. Initially it was 20%, then 10%, then 5%, and now it is nil. So they himself said the SSC can claim the excess credit then appearing in GSTR 2A by way of Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4. Now they cannot say you that you can claim the credit on the basis of GSTR 2A only, when they himself say excess credit can be claimed via GSTR via Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4. The third is, if you see the position from 1st January 2022, they have inserted new clause in section 16 subsection 2 clause AA. Clause AA has been inserted, and in the via clause AA, they have specified an additional condition that unless the details of invoice has been furnished by the supplier in GSTR1 or invoice furnishing facility, and those details has been communicated to the recipient in a manner prescribed, that is by way of GSTR 2B, the recipient is not eligible to claim the input tax credit on those invoices. So meaning thereby, when they have inserted clause AA with effect from 1st January 2022, so the GSTR 2B has got the legal validity from this date. So prior to that, there was no validity of GSTR 2A. So if I say, for the sake of discussion, yes, GSTR 2A was valid prior to this date also, then what was the need of inserting this clause AA in section 16 subsection 2 clause AA? So these are the legal issues which are arising in this case. But I'll restrict my discussion to the second issue, wherein in the notice the department reached that since the particular inward supply is not appearing in GSTR 2A, they will presume that the supplier has not made the payment of tax to the government, and since the supplier has not made the payment to the government, the condition contained in section 16 subsection 2 clause 2 is not satisfied, and the credit needs to be reversed. So sir, this circular has been issued to prescribe the method of validation of payment of tax by the supplier, meaning thereby as a recipient, I will always say कि भाई मुझे how I'll ensure that the payment has been made by the supplier. अब डिपार्टमेंट कह रहा है कि भाई टू वे में नहीं आ रहा तो मैं मानूंगा कि भाई सप्लायर ने पेमेंट नहीं करी, बट रिसिपिएंट की दिक्कत है कि भाई टू वे में नहीं आ रहा, तो इट डजंट मीन कि सप्लायर ने पेमेंट नहीं करी। इसका और भी लॉजिक है कि जो मेरी जीएसटीआर 1 है और जीएसटीआर 3 भी है, वो दोनों लिंक नहीं है। सप्लायर जो है कोई भी डिटेल आइटमाइज्ड इनवॉइस वाइज डिटेल जीएसटीआर 1 में देता है, बट 3B में वो एक कंसोलिडेटेड डिटेल देता है, तो दोनों में कहीं पर भी लिंक नहीं है। तो सप्लायर कभी भी ये इंश्योर नहीं कर, रिसिपिएंट कभी भी ये इंश्योर नहीं कर पाता वेदर द पेमेंट हैज बीन मेड बाय सप्लायर और नॉट। तो in order to tackle these kind of scenarios, the CBIC has prescribed the procedure for validation of payment of tax by supplier in respect of cases where inward supplies are not reflecting in 2A in financial year 17-18 and financial year 18-19। तो उन्होंने 4 केसेस बताए। The 4 cases for non-reflection of GST at 2A where the above procedure can be applied are as follows। पहला केस उन्होंने बताया कि सप्लायर ने अपनी GSTR 1 फाइल कर दी, बट द सप्लायर फेल टू फाइल GSTR 3B फॉर द सेट टैक्स पीरियड। द सेकंड केस वाज द सप्लायर failed to report a particular supply in GSTR 1 but has paid the tax in GSTR 3B। The third case is the supplier has wrongly reported the B2B supplies as B2C supply, meaning thereby उसने जो है GSTN नंबर डालना भूल गया, उन्हें बिजनेस टू बिजनेस सप्लाई को B2C सप्लाई GSTR 1 में दिखा दिया, तो भी वो GSTR 2 में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हुआ। The third is जो सप्लायर है उसने जब अपनी GSTR 1 फाइल कर रहा था, उसने उसका रिसिपिएंट का रॉन्ग GSTR 1 में डाल दिया, जिसकी वजह से जो उसका GSTR 2A था, पर्टिकुलर सप्लाई GSTR 2A में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हुई। So in all the above cases, the difference in ITC claimed by registered person in his return in GSTR 3B and debt available in GSTR 2A will be handled as below। तो सर हमने देखा कि अगर ये केसेस हैं जो 4 सिनेरियो हमने दिए, इस केस में उसका GSTR 2A में रिसिपिएंट के क्रेडिट कम आएगा, जबकि उन्हें 3B में ज्यादा क्लेम कर रखा होगा। तो इस डिफरेंस से कैसे डील करना है, तो उसका इन्होंने प्रोसीजर दिया। उन्होंने कहा इन केस ऑफ डिफरेंस इन आईटीसी एज पर GSTR 2A एंड आईटीसी क्लेम्ड इन GSTR 3B, the proper officer shall first seek the details of invoices which are not reflecting in GSTR 2A of the recipient, meaning thereby अगर GSTR 2A में और GSTR 3B के आईटीसी में फर्क है, तो पहले तो जो प्रॉपर ऑफिसर है वो आपसे डिटेल मांगेगा कि कौन कौन सी ऐसी इनवॉइसेज हैं जो GSTR 2A में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रही हैं। उसके अलावा the proper officer will also ensure that जो मेरी सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2 में अदर कंडीशन दी गई है फॉर क्लेमिंग ऑफ इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट, दोज कंडीशन शुड बी फुलफिल्ड बाय द रजिस्टर्ड टैक्सेबल person, like whether the recipient is in possession of all tax invoice or debit notes, and whether he has received the goods or services, whether he has made the payment to the supplier, etc etc। तो ये सारी कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई होनी चाहिए। बट इन ऑर्डर टू वेरीफाई वेदर द टैक्स इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ दैट सप्लाई हैज बीन पेड बाय द सप्लायर टू द गवर्नमेंट, द प्रोसीजर हैज बीन प्रिस्क्राइब्ड इन द सर्कुलर एंड देयर आर 2 केसेस। फर्स्ट इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन द आईटीसी इन GSTR 3B and in form GSTR 2A for the said financial year exceeds 5 lakh for a पर्टिकुलर सप्लायर, मीनिंग देयर बाय किसी पर्टिकुलर सप्लायर का जो आईटीसी आपने GSTR 3B में क्लेम करा था फॉर ए फाइनेंशियल ईयर, नॉट फॉर ए मंथ, वो 5 लाख से ज्यादा है और वो जो है 2A में 5 लाख से कम आ रहा है। तो उस केस में सर्कुलर कहता है द प्रॉपर ऑफिसर शैल आस्क द रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन टू प्रोड्यूस ए सर्टिफिकेट फ्रॉम चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ऑफ द सप्लायर। तो सप्लायर के चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट से एक सर्टिफिकेट देना है कि भाई ये सप्लाई जो है मेरे GSTR 1 में नहीं आ रही है ड्यू टू एनी ऑफ द 4 रीजंस व्हिच वी हैव डिस्कस्ड अबव, बट these supplies has been duly declared in the GSTR 3B and appropriate tax has been paid by the supplier, and this needs to be certified by the chartered accountant of the supplier, and on the basis of this certificate the ITC will be allowed to the recipient. The another case is where the amount involved is less than 5 lakh for a particular supplier. In that case, the certificate can be issued by the particular supplier himself, and there is no need to get the certificate from the chartered accountant of the supplier. So, lot of these things I have already covered in my deliberation. So one more thing which is important in this circular is that this CBIC circular is not applicable to completed proceedings. तो circular के end में लिखा हुआ है ये जो circular है ये completed proceedings पे applicable नहीं है, जबकि और जो है खाली उन proceedings पे applicable है जो ongoing proceeding है या जो initiate होंगी उस पे applicable होगा. तो in our view it is very unfair on the part of the department, since the circulars are always clarificatory in nature. Suppose किसी ने जो है पहले जो है किसी के पास नोटिस आया and to buy the peace of mind he has paid the tax, differential tax कि भाई जो मेरे 2A में नहीं आ रहा मैं पे कर देता and get the peace of mind. Now the government says जो कि आपने पे कर दिया ये जो सर्कुलर आप पे एप्लीकेबल नहीं होगा और and you will be penalized to that extent. So I think that is not the intended position of the law. And since the circulars are clarificatory, this should apply to the every registered person and it should be applicable from the beginning. Now let us see another clarification which has come in case of input tax credit. It is related to entitlement of ITC where the place of supply of service by way of transportation of goods including by mail or courier is to a place outside India. Section 12 subsection 8 of the IGST Act. तो सर ये भी एक बड़ा मेजर मुद्दा बना हुआ था इंडस्ट्री में, and that thing has been now clarified and it is a welcome amendment and welcome clarification. To give you the background, that जो section 12 subsection 8 है that deals with determination of place of supply where the supplier or the supplier and the recipient of services are located within India, meaning thereby supplier और recipient दोनों इंडिया में होने चाहिए तभी ये section 12 लगता है. So in that case what was happening that generally in this section 12 subsection 8 the place of supply of transportation of goods service is the location of recipient of service. But one provision was inserted in this section 12 subsection 8 which says that where the goods are transported to a destination outside India, in that case the place of supply shall be the location of destination of goods. So now what was happening that although the government intention was not to tax these transactions and to consider these transactions as export of goods or services, export of services and provide a level playing field to the Indian freight forwarders and the foreign freight forwarders, but this provision looks to be inserted half-heartedly. How? If you see the conditions which are given in the IGST Act for export of services is that the supplier of services should be in India and the recipient of services should be outside India, and the place of supply should be outside India. Now, in this case, what was happening? The recipient as well as supplier both are located in India. When both are located in India, while the place of supply as per this proviso is outside India, is virtually making as a non-export supply, and it cannot be considered as export. So in that case, the registered person was charging IGST, and this IGST was charged on this transaction, and they were showing this IGST charge under the head other territory or foreign territory. So there was issue since both the supplier and the recipient are located in India and the tax is charged under other territory. So whether the recipient will be eligible for input tax credit or not? This question was coming more so in the background that like in GST we see the GST is a destination based tax. So the tax should accrue to the state wherein the goods are consumed. So tax travels along with the goods. So now the goods are sent to the foreign territory, and when filing the return in GSTR 1, the place destination is shown as other territory. So when the destination is shown as other territory, so this tax is not going to the state government. And if the IGST credit is allowed in a particular state wherein the recipient and suppliers are located, so that state may have a objection that when we have not received the tax of that particular supply, so why we should allow the input tax credit of that other tax territory. So in the opinion of lot many professionals and tax fraternity, there was whispers which were going on that if it is related to other territory, the input tax credit in such case should be denied. So in order to clear this ambiguity, uh, the issue has been clarified, and as per the circular, they say the transaction is to be this transaction is to be considered as interstate supply, and recipient eligible to claim ITC even if place of supply is not the state in which recipient is registered. Second, the supplier of service shall report the place of supply of such service by selecting code 96 foreign country, meaning thereby जो basically जो supplier है उसको select करना पड़ेगा GSTR 1 में 96 foreign country, तभी उसको जो recipient है उसको credit मिल पाएगा. But in my view, definitely still there is a doubt, but they have issued a circular and the department is bound by that. But the GST Council also recommended for the omission of rule, omission of section 12, omission of provision to section 12, subrule 8, subsection 8. And in my view, this provision may be omitted in the upcoming budget. And definitely, since there were a lot of issues and they have issued the circular being clarificatory in nature should have the retrospective effect. Now, changes with respect to filing of returns under GST. So before discussing the change, what was the change which has come because of 48 GST Council meeting? Let me give you some background so that it can be explained in a better way. Insertion of explanation to section 12, subsection 75 of the CGST Act through Finance Act 2021 dated 28 March 2021. तो सर मेरा एक सेक्शन 75 सबसेक्शन 12 है जो कहता है नॉट विथस्टैंडिंग एनीथिंग कंटेन्ड इन सेक्शन 73 और 74 where any amount of self-assessed tax in accordance with return furnished under section 39, that is GST 3B, remains unpaid either wholly or partly, or any amount of interest payable on such tax remains unpaid, the same shall be recovered under provision of section 79. Meaning thereby, according to this subsection, अगर मेरा कोई भी सेल्फ असेस टैक्स और उस पे इंटरेस्ट अगर मेरा अनपेड रह जाता है तो डेट कैन बी रिकवर्ड as per section 79 that deals with the recovery proceedings, meaning thereby without issue of show cause notice they can directly resort to the recovery proceedings, and they will not be the department will not be going to issue you the show cause notice. तो इस पे जो क्वेश्चन अराइज हुआ व्हाट इज सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स, तो जो कि सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स वाज अर्लियर नॉट डिफाइंड, तो एक अमेंडमेंट आया और उन्होंने एक एक्सप्लेनेशन इंसर्ट करा और उस एक्सप्लेनेशन में उन्होंने कहा द एक्सप्रेशन सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स shall include the tax payable in respect of detail of outward supplies furnished under section 37 but not including in return furnished under section 39, मीनिंग देयर बाय कोई डिटेल्स ऑफ टैक्सेबल सप्लाईज जो आपने जीएसटीआर 1 में दिखाई थी, लेकिन वो आपने जीएसटीआर 3B में नहीं दिखाई, तो जीएसटीआर 3B में टैक्स पेबल कम है। मीनिंग देयर बाय आपका जीएसटीआर 1 में टैक्स पेबल ज्यादा आ रहा था, लेकिन जो कि आपने वो डिटेल जीएसटीआर 3B में नहीं दिखाई, तो आपका जीएसटीआर 3B में टैक्स कम आ रहा था। तो देयर इज ए डिफरेंस एंड देयर इज ए एक्सेस लायबिलिटी व्हिच हैज बीन रिपोर्टेड इन जीएसटीआर 1। तो उन्होंने कहा इसको हम सेल्फ असेस टैक्स मानेंगे। नाउ द इश्यू इज दैट if there is a difference between GSTR 1 and 3B and the liability is declared more in GSTR 1, now the department has the power to resort to the recovery proceeding directly, and they are not bound to issue you the show cause notice. So there were a lot of issues which are going on ki how department can resort to the recovery proceedings, and there has to be show cause notice, etc., and it is against the principle of natural justice. So department was also receiving these kind of complaints, and the different procedure has been adopted by field formulations. So in order to provide the uniform guidelines, the CBIC earlier issued guidelines, and in that guidelines the CBIC has said the opportunity to be provided for the following situation to explain the difference. तो basically तो in that guidelines उन्होंने कहा कि भाई आप intimation भेजो, उसको explain करने का मौका दो, etc. But these were the guidelines, they're not having any force of law. तो पूरा प्रोसीजर उसमें दिया गया था. This is the procedure. I am not going into the procedure due to paucity of time. Now, instead of guidelines, they have come out with Rule 88C. And this rule deals with manner of dealing with a difference in tax liability reported in statement of outward supplies and that reported in return. Meaning thereby, अगर आपका liability में difference है declared in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B, तो उसको कैसे डील करना है उसके लिए ये नया रूल लाए हैं, that is Rule 88C. So let us see in the diagram. Tax liability reported in GSTR 1 exceeds the tax liability reported in GSTR 3B. So there are two situations. First, such difference exceeds the specified amount or percentage. कुछ specified percentage और amount से वो ज्यादा है, तो ये अभी specified amount और percentage उन्होंने बताया नहीं है. The second case is such difference does not exceed specified amount or percentage. तो अगर वो difference within tolerance limit है तो आपको कुछ नहीं करना, लेकिन अगर वो difference within tolerance limit नहीं है, specified percentage और specified amount के अंदर नहीं है, उससे ज्यादा है, तो क्या होगा? तो intimation to be issued by tax officer for such difference in form DRC 01B. तो उन्होंने एक नया फॉर्म प्रिस्क्राइब कर दिया DRC 01B, जिसमें जो टैक्स ऑफिसर है, प्रॉपर ऑफिसर है, आपको एक इंटीमेशन भेजेगा. एंड द टैक्स पेयर आइदर टू पे सच डिफरेंशियल अमाउंट. अगर टैक्स पेयर एग्री हो जाता है, हाँ भाई डिफरेंस है, मेरी गलती है, तो इन दैट केस द टैक्स पेयर इज रिक्वायर्ड टू पे द डिफरेंशियल अमाउंट. और अगर टैक्स पेयर एग्री नहीं होता, इन दैट केस द टैक्स पेयर एक्सप्लेन द रीजन टू द सेटिस्फेक्शन ऑफ प्रॉपर ऑफिसर. तो आप सपोज उसने रीजन दे दिया, तो रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑफ फाइलिंग GSTR 1 फॉर सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड इफ नो टैक्स पेड और नो रिप्लाई फर्निश्ड. तो मीनिंग देयर पे अगर सपोज वो उसने इंटीमेशन दिया, आपने ना टैक्स पे करा और ना ही कोई उसको रिप्लाई करा, तो रूल 59 सब रूल 6 में भी अमेंडमेंट आया है कि आप जो GSTR 1 है वो सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड की आप फाइल नहीं कर पाओगे. रीजन नाउ इट नीड्स टू बी इंश्योर्ड कि अगर आपके पास कोई नोटिस आया तो आपको जल्दी से जल्दी इसको कराना है, नहीं तो आप सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड की रिटर्न ही फाइल नहीं कर पाओगे. मीनिंग देयर आई डोंट नो हाउ दे मेक दीस काइंड ऑफ लॉज. रीजन बीइंग इट विल result in stoppage of business actually. Then the another is where no payment made or no explanation provided within the specified period, explanation not found satisfactory, then recovery proceeding under section 79 may be initiated by proper officer. Meaning thereby या तो उसने पेमेंट नहीं करी, कोई एक्सप्लेनेशन भी नहीं दी, या एक्सप्लेनेशन सेटिस्फैक्टरी नहीं है, तो रिकवरी प्रोसीडिंग इशू फॉलो इनिशिएट कर सकता है. Now the another issue which was coming into my mind कि ठीक है, सेक्शन 79 में इन्होंने कह दिया कि भाई इंटीमेशन देगा और ये प्रोसीजर फॉलो होगा, बट इफ यू सी presently different practices are being followed by field formulation. Like you can see section 61 of the scrutiny of the returns. In case of many of our clients, the notices has been received under 61 uh, one of the CGST Act, which deals with scrutiny of return and intimating the discrepancy between the GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. So now it needs to be seen ki which section and is being used by the department, and they have lot many sections for issuing the notices and intimation under GST law. Now changes with respect to refunds under GST. अब refund में जो changes हैं, let us discuss that. Refund to unregistered person in case of cancelled service agreements. जो अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन थे वो रिफंड को क्लेम कर सकते हैं, बट अर्लियर नो प्रोसीजर वाज प्रिस्क्राइब. तो in order to prescribe that procedure, certain changes has been made in the rules. So let us see. There is no procedure for claim of refund of tax borne by unregistered bearers in case where the contract or agreement for supply of services like construction of a flat or house and long-term insurance policy is cancelled and the time period of issuance of credit note by the concerned supplier is over. For example, आपने कोई फ्लैट बुक कराया, आपको जो डिमांड नोट वो बिल्डर दे रहा था उसमें हर बार वो अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन प्रॉपर्टी है उस पर जीएसटी लगा के दे रहा था. सपोज आपने वो फ्लैट कैंसिल करा दिया 3 साल बाद कि भाई मुझे नहीं चाहिए, आप जो अपना फ्लैट संभालो, आप काफी डिले कर रहे हो कंस्ट्रक्शन में. तो उस केस में क्या हो रहा था कि बिल्डर आपसे कहता था कि भाई मेरी जो टाइम लिमिट है फॉर इशुएंस ऑफ क्रेडिट नोट वो मेरी निकल चुकी है, तो मैं आपको जीएसटी का जो पोर्शन आपने मुझे दिया है वो मैं आपको रिफंड नहीं करूंगा, मैं आपको खाली पेमेंट करूंगा आफ्टर डिडक्टिंग द जीएसटी अमाउंट. तो इस केस में जो अनरजिस्टर्ड बायर था उसको लॉस हो रहा था. वो कहता था कि भाई जब मैंने फ्लैट ही सरेंडर कर दिया और मैंने कैंसिल करा दिया तो मैं जीएसटी का भी पेमेंट करूं. लेकिन बिल्डर जो जीएसटी का पेमेंट करता था वो कहता था भाई जिस पीरियड तक मैं क्रेडिट नोट इश्यू कर सकता हूं और उसका बेनिफिट मैं ले सकता हूं और लायबिलिटी अपनी रिड्यूस कर सकता हूं उसका तो मैं बेनिफिट आपको दे दूंगा, लेकिन जो मैं गवर्नमेंट से रिकवर नहीं कर सकता उसका मैं बेनिफिट आपको नहीं दूंगा. तो इन ऑर्डर टू रिमूव दिस अनॉमली द जीएसटी काउंसिल recommended the CGST rules along with issuance of circular to prescribe the procedure for filing application of refund by unregistered bearer in such cases. Meaning thereby जहां पर बिल्डर ने क्रेडिट नोट इशू कर दिया और आपको जीएसटी का बेनिफिट दे दिया वो तो बिल्डर आपको क्रेडिट नोट के जरिए दे देगा, लेकिन जिस पीरियड के लिए बिल्डर आपको क्रेडिट नोट नहीं दे सकता और अपनी लायबिलिटी कम नहीं कर सकता उस केस में अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन को रिफंड के रूप में जाना पड़ेगा और रिफंड लेना पड़ेगा. एंड फॉर दैट रिफंड द रूल हैज बीन अमेंडेड नाउ. So rule 89 sub rule 2 has been amended to provide the document for filing refund in case of refund by unregistered persons, and also clarificatory circular 188 has been issued and the manner has been provided for claim of such refund. So in case of refund by unregistered person, it has to be filed in GST RFD 01 and the relevant date will be 2 years from the date of issuance of letter of cancellation of contract or agreement for supply by supplier. मतलब जब उसकी सप्लाई कैंसिल हुई है, जब उससे कैंसिलेशन लेटर इशू रिसीव करा है, इशू हुआ है, उसके 2 साल के अंदर अंदर वो जो है रिफंड अप्लाई कर सकता है. एंड नो रिफंड शैल बी क्लेम्ड इफ द अमाउंट लेस देन 1000 रुपीज. अगर रिफंड के अमाउंट 1000 से कम है तो वो रिफंड के लिए अप्लाई नहीं कर सकता. एंड रिफंड क्लेम can be filed by unregistered person only in those cases where at the time of cancellation or termination of agreement or contract for supply of services the time period for issuance of credit note has already been expired. तो ये तो हमने ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर लिया था. अगर बिल्डर या अगर सप्लायर क्रेडिट नोट इशू कर सकता है तो फर्स्ट ही शुड इशू द क्रेडिट नोट एंड रिड्यूस हिज लायबिलिटी एंड रिफंड द अमाउंट टू द रिसिपिएंट. अगर रिफंड उसी केस में अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन को अप्लाई करना है जिस केस में सप्लायर जो है क्रेडिट नोट इशू नहीं कर सकता और टाइम लिमिट फॉर इशुएंस ऑफ क्रेडिट नोट एक्सपायर हो चुकी है. नाउ चेंजेस विद रिस्पेक्ट टू अपील्स अंडर जीएसटी. फर्निशिंग ऑफ सर्टिफाइड कॉपी ऑफ ऑर्डर अपील्ड अगेंस्ट. तो सर अगर आप पहले प्रोविजन देखें जो मेरा रूल 108 है, मेरा 108 कहता है कि आप जो बेसिकली जो अग्रीव पर्सन है, अग्रीव पर्सन को पहले अपील फाइल करनी है ऑनलाइन, and after filing the appeal the aggrieved person is required to submit the physical copy of the certified copy of the order appealed against within 7 days of filing the appeal. तो अगर वो सबमिट कर देता है तो जो प्रोविजन एक्नॉलेजमेंट नंबर जनरेट हुआ था एट द टाइम ऑफ फाइलिंग अपील, तो डेट ऑफ अपील विल बी द डेट ऑफ जनरेशन ऑफ प्रोविजन एक्नॉलेजमेंट. और अगर वो जो सर्टिफाइड कॉपी ऑफ द ऑर्डर है वो सबमिट करता है आफ्टर 7 days ऑफ द फाइलिंग ऑफ द अपील, इन दैट केस द फाइलिंग ऑफ द सर्टिफाइड कॉपी ऑफ द order will be the date of filing appeal. So there were lot of issues which were coming due to this provision, and there were lot of judgment of the High Court which has been given ki what is the need of filing the certified copy of the order, and the order when order is already available online, because in many cases the order available online in the GST common portal, and it is just a procedural requirement, and due to procedural requirement the substantive right of the appeal cannot be taken away. So due to these things the government, the GST council has also taken the cognizance of the matter, and they say कि in case the decision or order appealed against has been uploaded on the common portal, मतलब GST portal, तो in that case जो आपकी डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग मानी जाएगी वो डेट ऑफ जनरेशन ऑफ प्रोविजन एक्नॉलेजमेंट ही मानी जाएगी, एंड यू आर नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू सबमिट द सर्टिफाइड कॉपी ऑफ द ऑर्डर टू द अपीलेट अथॉरिटी. सेकंड, अगर ऑर्डर ऑनलाइन अपलोड नहीं हुआ है तो इन दैट केस दैट पर्सन इज रिक्वायर्ड टू फाइल द सेल्फ सर्टिफाइड कॉपी. सर्टिफाइड कॉपी नहीं, सेल्फ सर्टिफाइड कॉपी. तो अर्लियर द वर्ड यूज्ड इज सर्टिफाइड कॉपी, तो देयर वाज कंफ्यूजन कि who will certify, whether it has to be certified by the authority department or whether it needs to be self certified. Now they say it has to be self certified, and the self certified needs to be self certified copy needs to be submitted within 7 days, and if it is submitted within 7 days the date of issue of provision acknowledgement will be the date of filing the appeal, and if it is not submitted within 7 days of filing the appeal, in that case the date of filing of the self certified copy of the order will be the date of filing appeal. So this consequential amendment has also been made wherein the appeal has been made filed by the department. So similar procedure will be followed in case of department also. The another welcome change is that कि earlier there was no procedure for withdrawal of appeal. Suppose आपने appeal file कर दी, बाद में at a later date आपको लगता है नहीं, we just want to withdraw the appeal and don't want to pursue the matter. So in that case there was no mechanism, there was no form of withdrawing the appeal. Now the form has been prescribed for withdrawal of appeal, that is APL 1/03W by the appellant, meaning thereby APL 01W by the assessee or APL 03W by the department. Now let us come to the changes with respect to demand and recovery under GST. So department has issued circular to provide a clarification with regard to applicability of provision of section 75 subsection 2 of the CGST Act and its effect on limitation. So sir, let us go through what is contained in section 75 subsection 2. So sir, as per section 75 subsection 2 of the CGST Act, in case where the appellate authority or appellate tribunal or court conclude that the notice issued by the proper officer under subsection 74, matlab the cases which deals with the fraud, misstatement, etc., is not sustainable for reason that the charges of fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of facts to wait tax has not been established against the person to whom such notice was issued, then the proper officer shall determine the tax payable by the noticee, deeming as if the notice was issued under section 73. Meaning thereby अगर आपको कोई नोटिस 74 में आया जिसमें जो डिपार्टमेंट ने आप पे एलिगेशन लगाई ऑफ फ्रॉड, willful misstatement and suppression of fact to evade payment of tax, तो उस केस में अगर आप ये प्रूव कर देते हैं कि कि आपने कोई फ्रॉड नहीं करा है, कोई विलफुल मिसस्टेटमेंट नहीं है और सपरेशन ऑफ फैक्ट नहीं है, तो डेफिनेटली the extended period of limitation which has been provided under section 74, which is generally 5 years, is not applicable. And the notice, and as per this provision, if it is an extended period cannot be invoked, then they say कि we will assume that the notice was issued under normal provision of section 73. So meaning thereby this is very draconian provision, and they have brought in the statute book, wherein they say कि अगर suppression, willful misstatement, fraud के चार्जेस प्रूव नहीं होते तो पूरा नोटिस जो है वॉइड नहीं है, पूरा नोटिस जो है इनवैलिड नहीं है, प्रोसीडिंग इनवैलिड नहीं है, हम ये मान लेंगे कि वो नोटिस नॉर्मल प्रोविजन में हुआ है अंडर सेक्शन 73 which deals with non fraud cases. Now the question, there was a lot of confusion regarding this provision. The first of all, suppose अथॉरिटी ने या प्लेट अथॉरिटी ने कंक्लूड करा कि भाई सप्रेशन और विलफुल फ्रॉड वगैरह नहीं है, तो सेक्शन 74 एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड ऑफ लिमिटेशन जो है अप्लाई नहीं हो सकता. तो जब उसने ये कंटेंट कर दिया और नोटिस इज डीम्ड टू बी इशूड अंडर नॉन फ्रॉड केसेस, दैट इज सेक्शन 73, तो नोटिस कितने पीरियड में एडजुडिकेट करना है, जो कि कोर्ट का तो ऑर्डर बहुत बाद में आएगा, एंड द पीरियड ऑफ passing the order under section 73 may have been already passed. तो उन्होंने सर्कुलर में क्लेरिफाई करा कि सेक्शन 75 सबसेक्शन 3 के हिसाब से इन केसेस एनी सच डायरेक्शन इज इशूड बाय अपीलेट अथॉरिटी और अपीलेट ट्रिब्यूनल कोर्ट, द प्रॉपर ऑफिसर इज रिक्वायर्ड टू इशू द order of redetermination of tax, interest and penalty payable within a period of 2 years from the date of communication of said direction by the appellate authority or appellate tribunal court as the case may be. Meaning thereby अगर appellate authority court ने held करा कि भाई ये extended period का केस नहीं है, सेक्शन 74 का केस नहीं है, ये 73 में आना चाहिए, प्रोसीडिंग 73 में चलनी चाहिए, तो उन्होंने ये कह दिया कि जब अथॉरिटी ने ये डायरेक्शन दी है कि 73 में ये प्रोसीडिंग चलनी चाहिए, उसके 2 साल के अंदर अंदर डिपार्टमेंट को ऑर्डर पास करना पड़ेगा और प्रोसीडिंग कंक्लूड करनी पड़ेगी. तो दिस इज वन क्लैरिफिकेशन. The another issue which was addressed by the circular is that कि suppose take an example like generally there is a limitation of 3 years in case of section 73 and it is 5 years in case of section 74. Now suppose the notice has been issued by the department after the period of limitation which has been provided under section 73, but within the period provided under section 74, meaning thereby 3 साल के बाद डिपार्टमेंट ने नोटिस इशू करा बट 5 साल के अंदर करा. नाउ द क्वेश्चन अराइजेस कि जब ये केस गया अपीलेट अथॉरिटी पे, कोर्ट में, अपीलेट ट्रिब्यूनल में, उसने हेल्ड करा कि भाई नहीं ये तो एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड का केस नहीं है, इसमें 5 साल का पीरियड नहीं लगना चाहिए था, जो कि इसमें फ्रॉड, सप्रेशन, विलफुल मिसस्टेटमेंट नहीं है. तो हमने क्या सेक्शन में देखा, उसने कहा कि भाई इट शुड बी डीम्ड द नोटिस हैज बीन इशूड अंडर सेक्शन 73. तो उसने कहा कि भाई ठीक है, नहीं है तो ये विद इन नॉर्मल पीरियड के अंदर ये नोटिस इशू होना चाहिए था. तो मीनिंग देयर बाय ये एक क्वेश्चन अराइज हुआ कि भाई जो कि ये नोटिस नॉर्मल पीरियड ऑफ लिमिटेशन के बाद इशू हुआ था बट विद इन एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड हुआ था, और बाद में अपीलेट अथॉरिटी ने हेल्ड कर दिया कि एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड इन्वोकेबल नहीं है इन सब केस, तो ये नोटिस वैलिड रहेगा या ये नोटिस इनवैलिड हो जाएगा, जो कि दिस नोटिस वाज नॉट इशूड इनिशियली विद इन द नॉर्मल पीरियड व्हिच हैज बीन प्रिस्क्राइब्ड अंडर सेक्शन 73। तो इस सर्कुलर में बड़ा ही वेलकम क्लेरिफिकेशन इन्होंने दिया और इन्होंने कहा कि अगर वो नोटिस जो था वो नॉर्मल पीरियड के बाद इशू हुआ था और जो पीरियड है वो जो है नॉर्मल पीरियड नोटिस का इशुएंस कर निकल चुका था, तो उस केस में ये एंटायर नोट प्रोसीडिंग नीड्स टू बी ड्रॉप्ड। इन्होंने एक और अच्छी क्लेरिफिकेशन दी, उन्होंने कहा कि अगर नोटिस में मल्टीपल फाइनेंशियल ईयर्स कवर्ड थे तो कुछ तो, और जो है अथॉरिटी ने बाद में हेल्ड करा कि एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड नहीं लग रहा है, तो इन दैट केस जो ईयर्स नॉर्मल नोटिस पीरियड में आ रहे थे उसकी प्रोसीडिंग कंटिन्यू रहेंगी, और जो टाइम बार हो गई जो नॉर्मल नोटिस पीरियड में नहीं आ रहे थे उसकी प्रोसीडिंग डिपार्टमेंट को ड्रॉप करनी पड़ेंगी। तो दिस इज वेरी वेलकम सर्कुलर एंड दिस विल बी वेरी बेनिफिशियल टू द टैक्स पेयर्स। Now changes with respect to assumption on services under GST. So this is also very important change. It deals with refinement in the scope of assumption of services of renting or residential dwelling to unregistered person. तो सर एंट्री नंबर 12 है मेरा assumption notification का, वो कहता है services by way of renting of residential dwelling for use as residence except where the residential dwelling is rented to registered person, meaning thereby अगर renting of residential dwelling है for use as residence to unregistered person, तो in that case it will be exempted. अगर renting of residential dwelling है to registered person, in that case it will be liable to tax under reverse charge mechanism as per reverse charge notification. Now the issue which was coming after this amendment was that कि suppose there is a proprietor of a firm, कि मैं एक proprietor हूँ, मैं रजिस्टर्ड हूँ जीएसटी में, जो कि जीएसटी में जो है पेन बेस्ड रजिस्ट्रेशन है, तो मेरा पेन जीएसटी में रजिस्टर्ड है। तो मैं अब अपने रहने के लिए घर किराए पे ले रहा हूँ किसी से, और मैं उसमें अपने उस घर में मैं रहूंगा, एंड दिस घर इज एंड दिस अकोमोडेशन इज नॉट एट ऑल रिलेटेड टू माय बिजनेस। नाउ द इशू व्हिच वाज कमिंग इज सिंस आई एम रजिस्टर्ड इन जीएसटी, जो कि प्रोपराइटर इज रजिस्टर्ड इन जीएसटी वाइड हिज ओन परमानेंट अकाउंट नंबर, तो उस प्रोपराइटर को जो उसने रेजिडेंशियल ड्वेलिंग लिया है फॉर हिज ओन रेजिडेंस फॉर पर्सनल पर्पसेस, उस पे भी जीएसटी देना है या नहीं देना है। तो इस पे दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट में एक केस गया, सीमा गुप्ता वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया। उसमें दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट ने हेल्ड करा दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट ने बेसिकली डिपार्टमेंट से क्वेश्चन करा कि भाई इसमें क्या होगा, तो डिपार्टमेंट ने जो है कहा कि भाई हम इसमें एक डायरेक्शन इशू करेंगे कि जो प्रोप्राइटरशिप के केसेस हैं उस केस में अगर प्रोप्राइटर जो है अपनी पर्सनल कैपेसिटी में रेजिडेंस के लिए जो है अकोमोडेशन ले रहा है और वो पर्सनली उसको यूज कर रहा है, तो रिवर्स चार्ज के प्रोविजन ना लगे। तो इन ऑर्डर टू गिव द लीगल बैकिंग टू दैट जजमेंट, they have amended the law now and they have inserted the explanation in entry number 12, and they say कि भाई अगर प्रोप्राइटर ने घर लिया है for his personal purposes and to be used as a residence even though he is registered, in that case also the assumption will be available under serial number 12 of the assumption notification. The another change is omission of assumption of services by way of access to a road or bridge on payment of annuity. So this assumption has been withdrawn with effect from 1st January 2023. Now changes in assumption and rate of goods. तो जो assumption में और rate of goods में changes हैं, so I will not be going into each and every heading because there are a lot of slides which I need to cover. So you can go through these changes. I'll share my presentation. So these are the changes related to the in the rate of goods, ethyl alcohol supplied to oil marketing companies, etc. Then फ्रूट पल्प और फ्रूट जूस बेस्ड ड्रिंक्स, तो वहां पर अब जो रिवाइज एंट्री हो गई है फ्रूट पल्प और फ्रूट जूस बेस्ड ड्रिंक्स अदर देन कार्बोनेटेड बेवरेजेस ऑफ फ्रूट ड्रिंक और कार्बोनेटेड बेवरेजेस विद फ्रूट जूस, मीनिंग देयर बाय अगर कार्बोनेटेड है तो वो दूसरे शेड्यूल में जाएगा विच इज 28%, और अगर वो विदाउट कार्बोनेटेड है तो वो 12% में रहेगा. तो these are the changes. Now let us come to the other clarification and changes under GST. First is invoicing under GST. Invoice in case of supply made through e-commerce operator and in case of OIDR services supplied to unregistered person. Suppose कोई person है जो e-commerce operator के through माल supply कर रहा है या OIDR सर्विसेज में माल सप्लाई कर रहा है, तो उस केस में इन्होंने कह दिया कि जो उसकी इनवॉइस है दैट शुड कंटेन द नेम ऑफ द रिसिपिएंट, एड्रेस along with the pin code and name of the state code and the set address shall be deemed to be the address on record. अगर हम रूल 46 देखें तो अगर आप सप्लाई अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन को करते हैं तो द इनवॉइस इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू कंटेन द name and address of the recipient unless this value of the supply exceed 50,000. But in these cases, in case of supply through e-commerce operator और OIDR सर्विसेज, अगर सप्लाई 50,000 से कम भी है तो भी सप्लायर को रिसिपिएंट का नेम, एड्रेस और पिन कोड देना पड़ेगा एंड दैट एड्रेस विल बी considered as a address on record for GST purposes. The another amendment is in rule 46A which deals with invoice cum bill of supply, meaning thereby अगर कोई registered person है जो taxable goods और services as well as exempted goods और services supply करता है तो उस केस में वो सिंगल इनवॉइस कम बिल ऑफ सप्लाई इशू कर सकता है एज पर रूल 46A. तो अब इस रूल में इन्होंने एक जो है प्रोविजो ऐड कर दिया और उन्होंने कहा कि दैट इनवॉइस कम बिल ऑफ सप्लाई शैल कंटेन द पर्टिकुलर्स ऑफ टैक्स इनवॉइस, बिल ऑफ सप्लाई एंड इनवॉइस इशूड इन अदर केसेस लाइक बाय आईएसडी बैंकिंग कंपनी एटसेट्रा, मीनिंग देयरबाय जो कंटेंट दिए हुए हैं एज पर रूल 46 टैक्स इनवॉइस में होने चाहिए या बिल ऑफ सप्लाई में होने चाहिए या अदर इनवॉइस अदर केसेस है उसमें होनी चाहिए, वो कंटेंट उसमें होने चाहिए. The another is validation of payment with e-scroll of RBI. तो उन्होंने एक अमेंडमेंट करा रूल 87 सब रूल 6 में. उन्होंने कहा in case where the bank fails to communicate the details of challan identification number to the common portal, meaning thereby पेमेंट हो गई लेकिन बैंक जो है सिन नंबर को जो है कम्युनिकेट नहीं कर पाया, सिन नंबर दे नहीं पाया. The electronic cash ledger may be updated on the basis of e-scroll of the Reserve Bank of India in cases where the details of said e-scroll are in conformity with the details in challan generated in PMT 06 on the common portal. So this is just a procedural. Then there another change is in e-way bill. This section, the rule 138 sub rule 14, which provide the assumption from the generation of e-way bill has been amended, and it is being stated that e-way bill shall not be required in case of transportation of jewelry, goldsmiths and silversmiths, wares and other articles. Chapter 71 accept imitation jewelry, meaning thereby पहले जब imitation jewelry की मूवमेंट होती थी तब ई-वे बिल रिक्वायर्ड नहीं होता था. नाउ दिस हैज बीन एक्सक्लूडेड फ्रॉम द assumption entry. Now if there is a movement of imitation jewelry exceeding the specified amount, then in that case the e-way bill will be required. Then tax on no claim bonus under insurance policy. So another clarification has been issued in this regard. So the question which came before the CBIC was that कि जैसे no claim bonus मिलता है अगर आपने कोई मेडिक्लेम पॉलिसी लिया है तो अगर आपने प्रीवियस ईयर में कोई क्लेम नहीं करा था मेडिक्लेम में तो यू आर एंटाइटल्ड फॉर नो क्लेम बोनस एंड दिस नो क्लेम बोनस हैज बीन रिड्यूस्ड फ्रॉम द वैल्यू ऑफ सप्लाई. तो बेसिकली टू क्वेश्चन अरोज इन दिस रिगार्ड. फर्स्ट इज when no claim bonus is being given to the insured person by the insurance company, so whether it will amount to supply of services by the insured person to the insurance company in the form of agreeing to the obligation to refrain from the act of lodging insurance claim, as no claim bonus cannot be considered. So basically इसमें ये held हुआ कि there is no supply of service by the insured person to the insurance company because there is no consideration, there is no supply actually by the insured person to the insurance company. So it should not be considered as supply by insured person to insurance company. Second is कि जो ये नो क्लेम बोनस है वो वैल्यू ऑफ सप्लाई में से लेस होना चाहिए फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ चार्जिंग टैक्स बाय द इंश्योरेंस कंपनी. तो द आंसर वाज यस, it should be reduced as all the condition of section 15 subsection 3 has been satisfied. The another important change is assumption from e-invoice generation. Assumption from mandatory generation of e-invoice is for entity as a whole and is not restricted by nature of supply being made by said entity. Example, banking companies. Meaning thereby, if you see the notification mandating the generation of e-invoices, certain exclusion has been given in that notification. Like the SEZ are not required to generate e-invoices, goods transport agency, banking company, etc., etc. So now there may be a case the particular company may be like banking company may be involved in giving other supplies also. Other supplies are also other than banking company. So in that case, whether it will apply on the entity as a whole or to the nature of supply. Like in case of GTA, you can take the example of GTA. GTA provide the goods transport services. The GTA also provide the warehousing services, and sometimes GTA also provide rental services. Now, whether e-invoice will be whether the entire GTA will be exempted or the portion of GTA invoicing will be exempted from the generation of e-invoice is needs to be seen. So as per this clarification, they said it is for the entity as a whole and not restricted by the nature of supply. But in my view, they have taken the example of banking company, and banking companies are required to be registered with the RBI under the banking regulations. So yes, banking is a very safest example to take in this case. But in case of GTA, so whether how this provision will be applicable needs to be seen. Whether it will be applied as a whole or restrictive nature of supply is not very much clear in this regard. Now let us come to the other recommendation which are there in the GST Council minutes, but yet not but are yet to be notified, and maybe some changes needs to be done in the upcoming budget. Transaction not to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. Para 7, 8A, 8B were inserted in Schedule 3rd of the CGST Act with effect from 1st February 2019 to keep certain transaction activities out of GST to be treated not supply of goods nor supply of services. जैसे कि तीन कैटेगरी थी जिसमें था सप्लाईज ऑफ गुड्स फ्रॉम प्लेस आउटसाइड द टैक्सेबल टेरिटरी टू अनदर प्लेस आउटसाइड द टैक्सेबल टेरिटरी, मतलब बाहर की बाहर चला गया. हाई सी सेज एंड सप्लाई ऑफ वेयर हाउस गुड्स बिफोर देयर होम क्लियरेंस. तो ये तीन एंट्रीज पे जीएसटी नहीं लगता, एंड बिकॉज दीज आर नॉट ट्रीटेड एज सप्लाई गुड्स नॉट सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज. तो ये जो एंट्रीज जो इंसर्ट हुई थी वो 1 फरवरी 2019 से हुई थी. तो देयर वर डाउट्स कि जो अर्लियर पीरियड है स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 1 जुलाई 2017 टू 31 जनवरी 2019, उस पीरियड में ये टैक्स लगेगा या नहीं लगेगा, उस पीरियड में टैक्सेबल थी या नहीं थी. तो जीएसटी काउंसिल ने कहा ये जो अजम्पशन है, ये जो क्लैरिफिकेशन है, ये जो एंट्री है, इसको हम क्लैरिफाई करेंगे. ये माना जाएगा ये एंट्री हैज बीन इंसर्टेड विद इफेक्ट फ्रॉम 1 जुलाई 2017. Further, this recommended that no refund of tax paid shall be available in cases where any tax has been paid in respect of such transaction activities during the period 1 July 2017 to 31 Jan 2019. उन्होंने कहा कि ठीक है, हम मानेंगे ये सप्लाई नहीं थी 1 जुलाई से, लेकिन अगर किसी ने टैक्स दे दिया है तो हम उसका रिफंड नहीं देंगे. मतलब कि जो जिसने दे दिया, जो है लॉ अबाइडिंग सिटीजन है, उसको रिफंड नहीं देंगे, लेकिन जिसने नहीं दिया दैट पर्सन विल गेट बेनिफिटेड. तो आई थिंक देयर शुड बी पैरिटी एंड द lawmaker should refrain from making such kind of provisions. Then there is a recommendation for the decriminalization under GST, like increase in the minimum threshold for launching prosecution from 1 crore to 2 crores, etc. Then reduction in compounding amount from present 50% to 150% to the range of 25% to 100% of the tax amount. Then decriminalization of certain offence under section 132, like obstruction or preventing any officer in discharge of his duties, deliberate tampering of material evidence, failure to supply the information. Then another is facilitate e-commerce for micro enterprises, e-commerce for unregistered person composition taxpayers. तो अभी हम present provision देखें तो composition taxpayers cannot make supply through e-commerce operator. Similarly, the unregistered suppliers also cannot make any supply through e-commerce operator, because as per the GST law, if you make the supplies from e-commerce operator, in that case you are mandatory required to take registration. So GST Council in its 47th meeting had granted in principle approval for allowing unregistered suppliers and composition taxpayers to make interstate supply of goods through e-commerce operators subject to certain कंडीशंस. तो इसमें इन्होंने कहा है कि भाई ये हम अलाउ कर देंगे, एंड जो कि जीएसटी पोर्टल पे सर्टेन चेंजेस नीड्स टू बी मेड. तो दिस फंक्शनैलिटी विल बी इंप्लीमेंटेड फ्रॉम 1st October 2023. So maybe in the upcoming budget they may be coming out with the enabling provisions, and after that the functionality should be developed on the GST portal. Another recommendation of the GST Council was for the amendment of definition of non-taxable online recipient and online information and database access or retrieval services under section 2 subsection 17 of the IGST Act. So I think in the upcoming budget these two definitions can also be amended. So I think I am done with the presentation. So thanks for